Don't be. That's all right. All right. Okay.
All right, everybody. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay. I try to project my voice out, but sometimes, yeah, it can be a little bit big in here. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Sam Wagner. I am a member, I'm the Ag and Food Field Organizer for the Dakota Resource Council. We are an organization of about 350 households across North Dakota that are dedicated to basically setting up sustainable rural communities. I'll talk a little bit about us a little bit later in this slide. But anyway, I wanted to thank you all for coming out here. Quick outline of our meeting. We are looking at some ground rules. I'll talk a little bit more about what DRC is, the concerns about the project, water economic impact, taxes, and state impact, and some of the pros and cons. So ground rules here are pretty simple. I understand that we have a lot of people here that are for and against this project. So we have some people that are undecided. So I want everybody to try and keep an open mind here. Please be respectful of other opinions. This is a town hall that is designed to have a conversation about this project, and we just need to be respectful of each other. I would also like to say, if we are talking about something, just understand that at any minute, I know not everybody here is an ag nerd like I am. So, there might be acronyms, there might be other, there might be things that might be basic to some of you, maybe not very familiar to others. And so please feel free to raise your hand, say, quick, I have a question. That also goes for the people on Zoom. I also want to let you all know that this meeting will be recorded. We have some people that were not able to make it here, so I will try to get a recording of this on the DRC Facebook page as well, if anybody wants to view this afterwards. So it'll probably end up being a YouTube link that I just take this video from the cloud and download it on there. But there will be a link that you guys can find for this. We will try to have a more full Q&A session at the end of the meeting. So if we get a little far in the weeds, I'll try and moderate and say maybe we can push that back just so that we can get through this entire meeting. So who is Dakota Resource Council? So we've been operational for about 45 years. The genesis of our organization started in 1978 when Western ranchers had the coal mines coming out. Back in those days, the coal mines could actually get a contract for mineral rights and strip mine your land, and they could evict you if you had a homestead on there. It was done in Montana with the copper mines. So our group of ranchers decided to band together, and we decided to go to Bismarck and Washington, D.C. and get the mineral rights changed so that ranchers could keep their land on North Dakota or find ways to get compensated properly for their land. It spent about 5 years, and we actually managed to get all of the mineral rights laws changed to the laws that they are currently today. We got reclamation for land, compensation for land, and contracts basically stating that you had to bring everything back. Right after that happened, the farm crisis went and hit. And one of our members famously said to us that I spent 5 years fighting the coal mines to keep my land. I'll be damned if I lose it to the bank. So our organization then marched to Washington. We saved the foreclosure with several lawsuits and organizing power. We saved the foreclosure of about 4,000 farms or 40,000 farms in North Dakota. And ever since then, our organization has been a mix of people that are looking at the energy industry and looking at the agricultural industry, and always putting grassroots organizing first. We do not go top down. We are not like Sierra Club where we say, oh, CAFO is bad, oh, oil bad, or any of that type of stuff. We actually take a more nuanced approach to it. We like to come out to here where a large group of you are sitting, and we like to find issues. We like to talk to the people. We like to see if somebody is coming in that is not wanted, or see if the community does want them. We just ask them, say what's on their mind. So, you know, we try to promote responsibility, and we try to do what the people tell us to do here. So we are nonpartisan. We have people in our ranks that would punch you if you called them a liberal, and we have people that would probably punch you if you called them a conservative, and everywhere in between. So, you know, we have a very strict credos of sticking directly to the issues and talking about the issues here. So effective-based organizing, I once again said the community is charged. We're issue-based, we're not agenda-based, and if the community decides that they would like our help, we can help them. We are a nonprofit 501c3 charity that basically can provide those groups with expert analysis, with legal analysis, with staff members such as myself that can help you out and help you get organized. And that's what we particularly do. So I find issues like this, and I try to set up a meeting and come and talk to people. So first and foremost, you know, we're talking about the Riverview Dairy project. This is known federally as a CAFO, or confined animal feeding operation. Over 90% of animals are raised in America come from CAFOs. Primarily the Midwest and North Carolina are the biggest hubs for them. The definition of a CAFO by the EPA is animals are confined at least 45 days in a 12-month period and don't have access to grass or vegetation during a normal growing season. With CAFOs, you have a large number of animals, so they produce a lot of solid waste. No sewage or wastewater treatment is required, so the resulting discharges can cause serious harm to the animal, human, and health environmental environments if left unchecked. So that's why we have our Department of Environmental Quality to try and mitigate these issues. Iowa, Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Ohio, Indiana are all among the states that saw the largest increase in CAFOs. And North Dakota has fewer CAFOs. And I'll move this here so people can read it a little bit easier. But with the recent loosening of our anti-corporate farming laws, multi-state CAFOs, multi-state corporations are now a little bit more free to come in. So I'm gonna get some common criticisms of our organization out of the way early. The first thing is a lot of people will tell us that this is just the way ag is nowadays. You know, I would argue that policy in a lot of ways has made our ag the way it is. You know, a lot of people have come to me talking about increased overhead costs, increased, increase fuel, fertilizer. I mean, a lot of you are farmers here, and I'm pretty sure a lot of you could tell me a lot of troubles about how tough it is to survive in this farm economy. But I would like to argue that our policy has made it this way, and in some ways it fuels it. I would say that, if we are putting together large infrastructure packages to lure out of state companies to come in, why can't we be using those millions of dollars to invest and give equipment, to beginning farmers, or low interest loans to beginning farmers? How can we use the money that we have in our state to invest in our local farms that are already here? Obviously, you've never been to one of these farms and you don't know how they operate. I am a part of a group called the National Family Farm Coalition. I serve on the executive committee for them, and I have worked with allies from all over the Midwest. I've known people from Wisconsin, from Minnesota, from Nebraska, from Iowa, that have all had some of these issues. And I've also, with them, I've toured regenerative farms all across the Midwest as well. I've seen some really interesting free-range chicken operations that basically integrate some modern practices with traditional agriculture. I have seen other ways that it can be done. Finally, there was a question to me posed a while back asking about, what is a family farm anyway, and why are you limiting me? And I take a look at it this way. My definition of a family farm is that if you can manage a farm with as few people as possible, raising exactly what you want to raise, and still be able to come home and make a profit afterwards, that is a family farm to me. If you want to take the risk and do 10, 15,000 acres, or if you want to do a 15,000 head operation, I would say go for it. But I don't necessarily want government policy that is going to catch you every time you fail, because as everyone knows, the larger your operation, farming is a very fickle mistress. I once knew a man that said to me, you can do everything right and still fail as a farmer. Like, that's just the hard truth of farming sometimes. And so I look at it as, if the farmer wants to take the larger risk, they can, but I don't want the government to do it. And finally, the third aspect of it is that an operation does not dominate the political or economic scene. The issue that I see with some farms is how a politician can bend over backwards, or if the farm fails, it can literally ruin the economy of an entire small town. I believe that farms can be the economic engines of small towns, but I don't want them to dominate completely, that one person or one corporation or one farm has all of the power in a community, because that's not a democratic principle to me, frankly. But that's my opinion. So we got another person into Zoom. So the Riverview operation, the main reason that I'm trying to do this is because I have confirmed through multiple sources that there wasn't a town hall like this, like there was up in Halstead when Riverview announced their facility outside of Hillsboro. And I did a little bit of digging into it, and I talked to the editor of Ag Week from the Fargo Forum. They didn't have any press release with this. I had called up the county and I'd asked them if anybody had filed a permit. It didn't take until I called up the township officers in the Abercrombie Township to realize that this facility had applied for a building permit almost 4 months ago. I've learned a lot about Riverview over the past few years, and I've seen that, yes, they have complied with the state laws and they have not had many issues in Minnesota. The editor of Ag Week actually told me when they were investigating that they said the only paperwork issue that they saw with Riverview was actually a clerical error, which their secretary actually fixed almost immediately. And it wasn't even an issue where they didn't have it. They thought it was a different day that they had to submit it, and they just didn't submit it because they thought it was a few months away. So I'm just trying to be honest and as transparent as possible with this. However, the other thing that I found in my research was in 2014, Riverview Dairy, you can find this, it was Ghost on the Prairie, an article by The Guardian that talked about Riverview Dairy in Baker, Minnesota. In Baker, Minnesota, they decided to propose a 24,000 head operation that was going to be outside of the town. There was a group called the Citizens Environmental Board that was a fixture in Minnesota politics since 1967. That was a way for citizens to review any environmental procedures or proposals that were coming into the state of Minnesota. This board, when they ended up reviewing the permit of Riverview Dairy, they found that they wanted to have a full environmental impact study for this 24,000 head dairy before they would okay the permit. After that, the board voted unanimously for this, and Riverview's lobbyists decided that this was unacceptable. They spend the next 2 weeks basically talking to the Minnesota Cattlemen's Associations, the Farm Bureau, the Agriculture Associations of Minnesota, and within about a year, the Citizens Environmental Board was pulled from Minnesota at that time. The Guardian attributes it to Riverview. The people in Riverview said that there were other outside factors that also applied to it, but there is a correlation to that. Riverview has dairies in Minnesota, South Dakota, Arizona, and Nebraska, and they own feedlots in Arizona and New Mexico. In Arizona, they take young heifers, which are female cows that have not yet been bred and had a cow. They said they like them down in the warmer climate so that they can grow, or they can be fed and grow a little bit easier. The heifers are the steers, the male cows that are born. Obviously, when you have baby cattle, not all of them are going to be female dairy cows. So you have about half of them male. So Riverview, in a way to vertically integrate their business, they bought a beef feedlot in New Mexico, and any of their steers end up going to that. This operation itself will be about 12,500 head in a single barn. They could expand this without having to update the nutrient management plan. I am not completely sure on the animal milking ring. I know that there is a walk-in dairy that has 125 head milking ring. I would assume that this one would be around 125 to 150, given the size of the facility. And once again, I do not have the exact figures on this, but judging by what the walk-in facility is, we would be looking at about 10 to 11 milk trucks coming from this facility in 2 shifts to Perham, Minnesota. So let's talk a little bit about the walk-in dairy. It's about 2 years old. It's south of Gary, Minnesota. It's often used as the site that Riverview likes to compare when they are building new dairies. It has about 10,500 animals on roughly 160 acres. So I would assume that this facility is roughly around 160 to 180 acres. The storage facility, Riverview prides itself in rain catching. They said it catches about 30% of its water use. This one does not have a biodigester, and to my knowledge on this facility, this one does not have it as well. The walk-in dairy produces about 7,000 gallons of milk a day. So that's 9 trucks from 10,500 cattle. And it currently ships to Perham, Minnesota. If you want to take a look, right there is what the walk-in dairy is. As you can see, that's about a quarter section of land. So if you're driving around outside North Dakota, you know, our sections are usually a mile by a mile. So you would be seeing about a quarter section of land. So if this dairy is built, it will be the largest of its kind in North Dakota, and it will effectively double the number of dairy cattle in the state. Like, I cannot state this enough, like, this facility is going to be massive compared to everything else. The largest facility that I'm aware of in North Dakota has about 1,800 head of cattle. So this will provide unique challenges to the facility. So if you'll take a look here, this is roughly the site for Abercrombie's dairy. It will be about a 1.4 miles from the Wild Rice River and about 1.8 miles to the east of the Red River. We have some questions and concerns. So water needs, this operation estimates it will need roughly 350 to 500,000 gallons of water a day. We get this estimate roughly because with dairy, they estimate a lactating dairy animal is about 28 to 40 gallons of water per day. So that's why I'm not giving you an exact number. I can only really give you an estimate on this. Geographically, you know, how does this comply with the anti-corporate farming law? As we've looked into this, you know, I would say with the organization of Riverview LLP, this is a limited liability partnership, which is slightly different than an LLC or a limited liability corporation. The biggest difference with this would be that the partnerships could possibly be out of state, and that would be the only way I could see this interfering with our anti-corporate farming law. Is this geographically the best location to be put at? How will runoff and the manure in the site affect the Red River, soil health, and human health? Can local farmers really sell this much corn, silage, and alfalfa for feed? You know, once again, this was a little bit more of a problem with the Herbert dairy when you're up in prime, you know, beet country. But, you know, we still have some of our best prime farmland here in here in the Richland County as well. Will this affect the local elevators? Who will grow this silage? And will they rent local land to grow this silage? One of the concerns that we can have with this dairy, and I can get to it a little bit further on, but the aspect of this is that if Riverview Dairy was to find renters or go to renters, you know, and say, hey, we are going to give you a premium price for your land, how will this affect current farmers renting on this area? Does this area have enough feed, or will they have to outsource it? And what is the actual tax revenue and economic impact on the project? So I have Dr. Madeline Luke on Zoom here. I will bring her up. She wanted to talk to you. She is a former city councilwoman and a doctor from North Dakota, and a member of DRC. Madeline, could you talk and just see if
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep, hold on a second. I'll pull you up so you can be full screen. There we go.
Can you hear me?
Yes, can you see your screen okay?
I can see my screen. I cannot see what you're looking at, though.
Can you see the water testing though?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Okay. So, as Sam said, my name is Madeline Luke. I'm a retired internist. I've been practicing in Valley City for about 30 or 40 years, and I am a member of
Everybody hear
DRC.
okay? No.
Can you hear? And I'm a member of DRC because I have a particular interest in water. In North Dakota, I found that sometimes we have too much, sometimes we don't have enough. But when it comes down to it, we have to have water and we have to have clean water. So the proposed project is of concern. I certainly eat meat, I drink milk, and I eat cheese. So I am not against animals, but I think it is a numbers game. And the problem is that when so many animals are in one place, it takes a real toll on natural resources, but also human health. In regards to water, I would like to know, where the water is coming from. So as Sam mentioned, these projects need a lot of water.
More
Dairy
so than
cow,
regular feedlot.
okay. So a dairy cow needs anywhere between 30 and 50 gallons of water a day and maybe up to double in hot weather. And so that means between 375,000 and 625,000 gallons a day plus. I looked at the state website that shows where water has been permitted, and I do not see as of yet anything that looks like they've permitted water to come from the aquifers. So one question I would ask them is, where is the water coming from? So let's say you have 12,500 dairy cows in a small amount of area. The main reason I think that they are moving out is because they need a place to put their manure. These are a lot of numbers, but I'll try to put it in context. Again, I'm taking these numbers off of their actual permit, which was just released about 5 days ago. It looks like this project will put out 14.2 million cubic feet of manure and wastewater a year.
Or 14.2 cubic feet of million cubic feet of manure.
Manure and wastewater a week, also known as
Week.
107 mega gallons per year. A mega gallon's 1,000 gallons. I can't get my head around that number, so I did a little bit of calculation. It looks like from the internet that, and this is a Cornell University site, 200 cows is about equal to the poop from 8,400 people. If you do the math, it looks like 12,500 cows would be equal to 525,000 people. So this would be 500,000 people pooping out waste, which is spread on your land and it's all untreated. The permit has said that you guys have offered to let them use your land for spreading the manure. And when all is said and done, they have 14,000 acres committed. So that is about 0.6 or a bit over half of your township that will be containing their manure. So my concern is like, okay, what happens to the groundwater when you put all this stuff on here? First of all, this project itself overlies the Wahpeton Buried Valley Aquifer. I don't know much about your aquifer, but it is kind of a surfacey one, and I think that there are a bunch of wells that you get water out of. The Department of Environmental Quality in their permit approval says they are not asking for any more monitoring wells. They're not asking for any monitoring wells at the site because it has a clay liner, and they also think that the soil types are such that they're not going to contaminate the aquifer. So that's a hydrological technical assessment. So that is the
Do you want me to change slide for you?
No, there's no slide. There can be slides, but there aren't any. So that's the water that's really coming off of the project itself, which isn't very much. But more of my concern is in this 14,000 acres that you'll be spreading the manure. That's a lot of stuff to get on there. Within 2 miles of the project, there are 27 domestic wells, 2 municipal wells, and I assume that those are wells from which you take drinking water. 17 observation wells, 1 stock well, 1 stock/domestic well, and 6 monitoring wells. It appears that your water, groundwater, is coming from maybe the Wahpeton Buried Valley Aquifer, the Wahpeton Sand Plain Valley, and the Dakota Group Aquifer. And then there's a whole bunch of other places that the water is coming from that either they don't identify or they didn't say. So my question to you is that you're using the water close to the project, you're spreading manure on top of these wells, I think, in your drinking water. Who's going to be doing the monitoring of this? So then the question is, what's in the manure? Okay, the livestock manual does insist that the
Livestock
soils.
manual for context is basically the
Yeah,
Bible.
that is it's a
livestock.
70-page Bible that tells the CAFOs what they have to do in order to build here. And contained in that, they say, okay, the soils need to be checked every year or every so often. The manure needs to be checked every so often. And were there monitoring wells, that would need to be checked so often. Well, you don't have any monitoring wells, okay? But the soil and the soil and manure would be checked periodically, and they, concentrate on the usual things like nitrogen, phosphorus, and the minerals in the soil. What they don't check for, and this is because those because the DEQ is used to, I think, dealing with row crops and not animal agriculture, is that they don't check for estradiol, which is a form of estrogen. There's a lot of cows there making a lot of milk. And of course, there's going to be a lot of estrogen, which is the female hormone. And that is in the form of estradiol, and that gets into the water, into the soil. Also, they're not going to be checking for any antibiotics. Riverview Farm says they don't use antibiotics, but I have a great deal of difficulty believing that, since the most common problem with infectious disease for cows is mastitis, and that's generally treated with antibiotics. And then of surprise to me was that they also, a hydrologist that we talked to earlier in the week said that they've had to check for like things like caffeine and heavy metals. And I suppose that the caffeine would be because there are people working there. I'm not sure, but they have found that as well. So those are the chemicals that are found in the manure and probably will get in the soil and probably will get into your groundwater. And then the other part of it, which is dear to my heart because I'm a physician, is the bacteriological stuff, or what we call the bad bugs. So bacteria, parasites, and viruses, they're everywhere. There are a lot of animals, and there's going to be a lot of poop, and there's a lot of these bad bugs around. The parasites are Cryptosporidia and Giardia, and if you've ever gone camping or been overseas and you came back with really bad diarrhea, that's Crypto and Giardia. They are treatable, but they're pretty uncomfortable. The bacteria are a problem. First of all, because you have so much wastewater and manure out there, that some of it is going to leach into the air and the soil, into the water. And in the earlier 2000s and late 2010s, there were a couple of outbreaks of E. coli 0151, the really bad E. coli that were tracked directly to cattle farms down in Arizona. So you're just at risk for having bacteria get into your water and getting into your crops. I call them bad bugs because there's a certain number of bacteria which are resistant to antibiotics. And people and animals, when you use more antibiotics, the bacteria get smart and they become resistant to the bacteria. When you have so many animals together, the bacteria, first of all, the load is great. And second of all, they all get together and they swap genes. So the ability for these bacteria to develop resistance is really quite significant. It's estimated that 35,000 people died in the US from antibiotic-resistant infections in 2019. And it's estimated that 2.8 million resistant infections occur in the United States every year. Now, there's no question that doctors and hospitals, and very sick people are responsible for some of this, but we can't address it all, because when the animals are getting so many antibiotics to treat whatever, because they're all packed together in one place, there's just more of these resistant bacteria around, and it gets into the human system. The last thing I want to bring up is this question of H5N1. You've probably all heard that there's this bird flu going around. Influenza, like SARS, has a way of mutating. Mutating is the virus or the bacteria just changes its attributes, so that it's like playing whack-a-mole. And birds and pigs particularly are a good reservoir for influenza. And when these viruses mutate in such a way that they're a risk to human health, then becomes, there's the potential for pandemics. So the current problem right now is H5N1. It's thought to have started in wild birds and moved into domestic birds. And that's when you heard in the news that so many flocks were killed. So now it's moved from domestic birds into cattle. And H5N1 has been reported in herds in 12 different states. And it's been unusual because in most animals, it's a respiratory disease, and it's lungs and coughing and such. With the cattle, it looks like the H5N1 virus is concentrated in milk, and it doesn't make the cattle very sick. So that's a really good thing. When it's been found, the dairy producers have been discarding the milk until the infection is over with. And so far we've done okay. But the problem is that the cattle, H5N1, can go to people, and there have been 14 cases reported since the beginning of the year. So the question is, where does it go now? Does it stop, and just be a disease that cattle and a few people get, and it's not a big deal? We hope so. But as with SARS, with COVID, you don't, hope is not a strategy. And there has been a lot of push to do more monitoring to restrict cattle movement, because that's thought to be the source of the movement of the virus. And as I mentioned before, it's a numbers game. The more and longer contact with other animals are, so you got 12,500 cows living together for a long time. They're just a setup for bacteria or viruses to mutate. And as a physician, I feel like we really need to do things that stack the odds against going to a period of time when we don't have many antibiotics, because the drug companies truthfully are not developing any new ones. And as soon as they develop new ones, they're actually going into animals. And the other thing is that we certainly do not want to, do things that would even remotely promote another pandemic. We've been through that. It's no fun. So the things I would ask is, as Sam mentioned, there has been really no outreach to you folks. I found out about this project only because a reporter talked about it at the one in Trail County. I called up the Department of Environmental Quality, and they told me that yes, indeed, the Abercrombie Dairy had applied for a permit back in March, and it looks like not very long afterwards, your township approved it. So where is the role in outreach? You folks who have to live with this thing. Number two, what happens if your wells do get contaminated? Who's liable for that? And who's going to do the monitoring? And then thirdly, H5N1, the way to contain it, or at least get a hold of it, is to monitor it and to try to prevent spread of it. So is there any protection that Riverview Dairy plans to put in. Since the thought is that the H5N1 virus spreads when cattle move around, and they're moving cattle between probably Minnesota and North Dakota and Arizona and New Mexico. What kind of safeguards are there placed in there? And the last thing is, and I didn't mention this before, is that in regards to surface water, there's 14,000 acres that have been okayed, quote unquote, for spreading the manure. I looked at the maps, and it looks like a whole bunch of them are right on the banks of the Wild Rice River, which are according to the geologists, that are very prone to flooding and erosion. So whatever is in the manure, say you spread it in the fall, and then next spring, there's a flood, which is not unusual. So all that stuff washes into the wild rice and then into the Red River. And I can't see that that's going to do, the flora, the fauna. It's just another contaminant in your main stem river. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I can put the numbers on slides.
I'll put a 10-minute cap on this, but since Madeline's on Zoom, is there anybody that would like to ask any questions? Yes.
Are there any requirements then by this corporation that's proposed to come in? Aren't there any liabilities for them to ensure safe water for all the farm wells that will be around the cattle barn? We are gonna be exactly 2 miles from it.
Yeah.
So of course, I'm concerned about my water. Not
There-
only
there-
do I have enough water, but will it be clean water that I can drink?
Yeah, there is no mention that I could see of monitoring these wells that are being used, and there is no liability. I have never seen a liability clause in any of these permits that I've reviewed.
Yeah, we got one back here. You want to come up so you can, I don't think she can hear you. That's, yeah.
I can hear him.
Oh, you can? Okay.
I don't know if it's a Minnesota thing or not, but in Minnesota, they are liable. If the wells go out of trouble or whatever, they are liable to make sure they come up. We're over by Campbell, Minnesota, and they've actually done that for some of the wells. And some of the wells were, they were flowing wells, and rather, they weren't very deep. They've taken care of them or whatever, so they are. I just want to address the liability. I don't know if it's a Minnesota thing, but in Minnesota, they're liable for the well. So if there is a well that goes bad, they have to.
Yeah. I think that this is where it gets to be, you prove that I did it type deal. I don't know what else.
To a point of where you prove if I did it.
Yeah, you have to prove that I did it. And then I suppose you could sue them, but there's nothing in the livestock manual that says anything about that. And there is nothing in the Century Code that says anybody's liable for anything.
That's certainly a possibility. I'm not sure about all that. They've actually fixed a well that was proven to have other issues. And they took care of it because they were neighbors.
Nice.
That's their piece.
I think there's a big discrepancy between Minnesota and
Yeah.
North Dakota though,
Yeah.
especially with water rights. I think everybody kind of knows that.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
So, I think we'll end up questions here. Madeline will still be on to. One more?
The manure being produced, is that per month, per 3 months, per year?
The numbers that I gave you were per year. Now and Sam can give you the reference, or actually you can go to the website yourself, but under DEQ, there is the permit.
Yeah, that is the first, the first site on like Google and Yahoo. When you type it into the search bar, look for DEQ water permit, Abercrombie Dairy, Abercrombie, North Dakota, and that should be at the top. You can see the full permit there.
And that is the rough idea. It has taken me about a week to get the details out of it, and the details are thousands of pages. but you will see the calculations there, and the numbers I gave you are rounded up annual numbers.
All right, I think I saw one more question if somebody wanted to.
Well, Sam, I was gonna ask, is she aware of any really like worst case scenarios in our neighboring states, South Dakota, Minnesota, where one of these CAFOs has come in and there've been terrible effects, some.
Well,
Have we got any
Kewaunee
no.
County, if you look at the quote down there, Kewaunee County in Wisconsin is typically understood as one of the poster children for really bad water quality and bad actors in the CAFO industry. Southeastern Minnesota is another problem area where it's a little bit more on the majority of hog farm side, but there are a few dairies that are also contributing to that where there is some significant water problems. It also has to do a lot with sandy soils in those areas. I'm not completely sure what Kewaunee County's situation is, but on some of my other slides, I will address the other states as well.
South
Yeah.
Dakota has really expanded.
Yes.
In a big way, their
Yeah.
dairy.
And in South Dakota, they said 79% of all of their waterways have faced some sort of contamination from animal agriculture, according to our sister organization, Dakota Rural Action in South Dakota.
And I think a lot of that is
Yeah.
open range
Yeah.
cattle that are
Yeah.
that are pasturing in the water, in the waterway, not confined. So I don't know. I'd like to know more about.
Yeah.
These.
If you want, I could hook you up with Frank James, who is the executive director of Dakota Rural Action, and he knows a lot about the South Dakota issues. So honestly, if anybody else wants to email me or contact me for more information on that too, I have the ability. I have some people. I have a contact in southeastern Minnesota, and I do have a contact out in Wisconsin as well that could also direct you to some people that have.
But, I'm just gonna interrupt and saying, to me, it really is a matter of how many you have in one place. I understand that that cattle poop, if you have them on the range, they poop. And that's part of life. Some of it may get into the water, but when you have so many in one place, it becomes quote unquote unnatural. So then you have the free flowing bacteria or viruses, just passing stuff back and through. Plus, in that 14,000 acres, you've got a lot of wastewater and manure that you would never get if you had, say, 5,000, head dairy scattered throughout your county or a couple of counties. It's the fact that you guys are just going to take it in the short in a big way. I think, and I could be wrong, we would like to engage a hydrologist to go through the measurements of the soils and the soil borings and take a look at the aquifers to get a technical opinion. I don't have a hydrology degree, but common sense, I think, would tell you that putting so much stuff in such a small amount of space probably isn't such a great thing. And I think that what you can do is ask the DEQ to hear you out and ask these questions and make them think about it, because you're going to have to live with it. The deal with the Department of Environmental Quality is that they release they release what they call an announcement with the fact sheet, which is kind of a summary of the permit. And then 30 days from there,
You have a question there?
after that, if there are enough people stand up and say, hey, I got a question, then if they may decide that it's worth holding a public hearing. If
All right,
nobody says anything, you're done. You're getting it.
Yep.
Okay, my question.
Senator Lewick has a question. Yeah.
My question is this, so the manure that you're talking about being spread on all of these acres, are you talking about it being just a bulk spreading on top of the ground? Are you inferring that there's a problem with injection of this manure? Are you talking about recycling of the manure as well?
Well,
And-
we're talking about it's they say it's going to be, what they do is they take the manure and they separate it out. Some of it they will use for bedding and the rest of it they will knife it in. Okay, and knifing should keep the smell down. But like I said, I'm not a hydrologist. I don't know how to evaluate the soils. Some of it will be taken up by the plants and quote unquote, it's supposed to be limited to the agronomically acceptable rates. I've heard from, an agronomist or a farmer that says, yeah, what they're using as a phosphorus index to allow you to apply this may not really be a value study, may not be a valid measurement. And certainly in other states that have already had experience with CAFOs, when they have looked at what has been allowed legally, so within the law and within regulations, and they actually measured the amount of runoff that's come off of the land, it's been a lot more than was anticipated. And this was in Michigan, I believe.
Acres of coverage.
It would definitely be, I would say, in my opinion, it would be effective, but it would not always be the most practical solution, especially if you want to grow the amount of animal agriculture that your goals have been set. So, if you put in this one at 12,500 head, maybe you want to put a hog farm in, maybe you want to put a turkey farm in, you're going to start getting more and more of those farms. They're all going to need acres too. So pretty soon you're going to have way more acres than your entire county too, if you have a high threshold. So the other aspect of this could be, yeah, if you want to put this particular facility in and then double the number of acres, you might be limiting yourself with the other, with the other acres. But the other question that you got to ask is that, is that necessarily a bad thing? Like, you might still have the economic development that you want, but the pollution control that we also desire, and that could be a happy middle ground. So anyway, Madeline, thank you very much for speaking. I just have a few more slides to get through and we can kind of open up the Q&A a little bit more. So I will. So we talked a little bit about that. I guess moving on to this with the size of this dairy, the issue that we have with this that needs to be considered is the fact that this facility is extremely large compared to the other facilities. And there are concerns about mega dairies. First and foremost, the dairies will get discounts at lower rates than most farms in the area, giving them an edge over the rest of the competition. It's just a matter of scale here. They will always get served first. They will get sweetheart deals. This can affect smaller farms and smaller operations. I used to work as a general laborer for Dakota Valley or Dakota Plains Co-op way back about 13 years ago. And I do remember how our organization would usually end up supplying the Kohler farms in Valley City, North Dakota, because they were easily our biggest customers. So we had to keep them happy. I watched as there were probably about 3 or 4 farms that had, about 1,500 acres that would end up, being pushed back, being the last in the line, in the queue line when I was filling up anhydrous tanks for them. It does change the dynamics of how farmers interact with each other in our community. The other concern that I have with this facility is that if this facility and the Trail County facility in Hillsborough get built, you're looking at nearly 30 milk trucks running out to the Minnesota border. The question that I have to ask to everybody here is, we have 26 dairy farms currently operating in North Dakota. And with this, from a business perspective, if you have 30 milk trucks coming from 2 locations in a fairly static location that a creamery can know is a very consistent is a very consistent, supplier of milk. What is the incentive for any company in Minnesota to try and go another 250 miles to Lisbon, another, 160 miles to Jamestown, we are basically going to, I don't believe that these smaller dairies are going to be able to compete with these large industries. And do we have an obligation to protect those dairies that are already operating in North Dakota? If we concentrate all of our cows in one area, we also become more prone to disasters if something goes wrong, especially for the business aspect of this. These businesses operate on a principle known as just-in-time operating. If you can make your businesses extremely concentrated and extremely efficient, that's good. You can make a large profit off of these, and you also make your logistics, you make your you make your transportation costs. Everything is very, very streamlined and well managed until it goes wrong. In a good example of this is the Smithfield plant down in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. The Smithfield plant supplied 160 million meals of meat products to Americans every week. COVID happened and the meat plant shut down. The conditions were too cramped, they could not do it. Now you started in 2020 seeing supermarket shelves going bare because of the fact that these plants, which are producing so many products, aren't operating. Likewise, with our dairy industry, what we've seen is a steady loss of the number of farms. However, the herd size and the amount of milk produced per year has not changed effectively. So why is that? The answer to that is consolidation. So if you have certain number of farms closing down, but you're keeping the same milk numbers, you're basically just shutting down all of the small farms and consolidating them. So with this, what we're saying is, if a blizzard shuts down the road and 21 milk trucks or 9 milk trucks a day can't get out, that's a lot of change right there if the dairy has to dump those organizations. So having a plan on what you're going to do in these type of emergencies is a very good thing to consider when building these facilities. Flooding also, the site itself might not be flooded, but the highways getting to the facility could also be an issue. So that can mess up your supply chains. And how do you make sure you keep getting that milk out of there every day is a concern that we need to be looking at. And then finally, there's the outbreak on a site. As Madeline was saying, if there was infected milk, how do you dispose of it? How do you make sure that that is taken care of? And how do you manage that risk? Finally, with the taxes and zoning, land for dairy is taxed as ag. So if this facility is running at full strength, having trucks running silage, running milk, running basic operations, employees coming in and off, you're only getting the same amount of tax structure that you're getting off of the same acres of corn. It is zoned and taxed as agriculture. So the only thing that you are going to be getting property taxes off of is as it is ag-based land. The issue that you are going to run into, and I've seen, and I will say this, the North Dakota legislature has been very generous about putting together packages for infrastructure to help these struggling townships. However, I would also argue, though, that policy is going to be unsustainable. Like, we cannot keep having these makeshift bills. If we're going to be doing these facilities, we might need to start considering that these facilities are a different type of operation and may need to be taxed accordingly in order to pay for the township and roads that they need to. The reasoning behind this is North Dakota township laws itself. township laws or townships in the century code state that North Dakota, a township cannot force a company to pay for a road, force a animal feeding operation to pay for a road. They cannot force a animal feeding operation to pay a licensing fee of over $500, because a lot of townships decided that they were gonna get away with this by saying, okay, we can't make you pay a road, but we'll call it a licensing fee of $15,000 a year, or something like that. The townships also cannot increase their setback distances, so the amount of setback that a setback is, if I build a facility currently as it stands, from the center of that facility, I draw a circle 1 mile around my facility, and you cannot build a business, have a house there, or a recreational center, or a place of worship, or a business of any type without the consent of the property there, or property owners there. Townships also cannot deny a permit or sue a facility for negligence without risking paying all of the legal fees. That was actually changed just in the 2023 legislative session. So the thing that I have to ask people here is, if you are looking at doing this project, one thing that could be proposed, if you talk to the facility, is do they have a closure plan or a bond of some sort that if this facility goes under for any reason, they actually have a means to pay for the cleanup of the facility or the tear down of the facility if need be. This is something that they can't force.
You have land for dairies, this taxes that what about the buildings?
The buildings you cannot tax as well.
Where are you getting your information from?
This is basically the North Dakota Century Code. If you have land zoned as agricultural, you cannot tax the buildings.
You talked to the state tax commissioner about this?
Yes,
You verified it?
as far as I know.
No. Different question? As far as you know.
So what tax code are you talking about?
Well, so tell me what the difference between ag and commercial is from a taxing purposes. They're both taxed at 10%, right? So that doesn't change anything. So the buildings, are you 100% sure that it cannot be taxed as commercial?
Well, I've been to the Ag Task Force meetings that are standardizing the laws across the state. And we have basically had the discussion that from the Township Association, Larry Severson and the county commission, or the Board of Counties, they are saying that we cannot recoup the tax dollars from this. In South Dakota, however, every building.
That's not the state tax commission. That's the township's viewpoint, the Association of Counties, which is not conclusive. So I think that information is not 100% valid, that cannot be taxed.
No, it's not that it
verified.
cannot be taxed. Sorry, it's that it is taxed as agriculture.
But buildings is the question, right?
The buildings are the question, but as far as I know, only in South Dakota is that for sure that I know that a building is a building. If you have a Quonset, if you have a chicken coop, if you have a farmhouse, they all get taxed the same way. And what I was told from when Doug Goring was saying about it, said, well, North Dakota does not have that type of tax structure.
On a farm. but
On a farm.
Commercials,
Okay.
it's not been verified.
So how do we figure out that information?
I think the tax commission is working.
Okay.
But that can be easily changed essentially.
Once again, public subsidies, I touched on this a little bit. You know, these will probably have to take some electric infrastructure, some water infrastructure. Roads leading to the site are usually needed to be improved. They will be eligible for a value-added infrastructure bill that was passed, what was it, 1437 last year, Larry?
Couldn't tell you that.
Okay.
Like that.
Okay.
900 though.
Yeah. But I guess, once again, to kind of answer your question here, we have to ask ourselves, do the benefits of the facility also equal the taxation that we are getting from this facility?
What kind of taxation are we looking at from this facility?
As far as I know, it's basically going to be taxed as agricultural land. And the issue that they had in the ag task force meetings was basically saying that there's just no way we can recoup the road loss, you know, the amount of wear and tear from the roads with the income that we're getting into it.
What's the point of having this facility? We gotta put built for it.
There are some townships in North Dakota that have, when they issue the permit for that facility.
Yeah.
They have negotiated that road maintenance as part of the permit. So like in Ransom
Yeah.
County, there's
So-
a confinement operation that in part of the permit that was issued by the county.
So-
Township. It's in, so.
Mr. Stoffring here, I will fully disclose, he's the chair of DRC and he's decided to be graceless. He gave me the North Dakota Century Code, NDCC section 57-2-27.2 states that the true and full value of agricultural land for property tax assessment purposes for its quote unquote agricultural value for 2024, the average estimated agricultural value per acre is $674.04. The agricultural lands are then valued at 10% of their assessed value, which is defined as 50% of their true and full value. North Dakota also offers several exemptions for farm residences, farm buildings and improvements. And that's it. The buildings and improvements on agricultural land that may be exempt if they are used as part of a farm plant, such as raising crops or grazing animals. This can include the buildings used to feed livestock such as poultry, cattle, pigs, or other non-traditional livestock.
But there's the gray area. You could argue MinDAC would fall into that, and MinDAC is still fully assessed at a commercial rate. Right? Answer that.
I am not sure what MinDAC
You're
could
the
be.
highest tax paying. And then you could identify that as into that section. Or not.
Okay,
But MinDAC is also a co-op, does that matter?
Well, that's the debate on the LLP or the co-op. I mean, I would think if MinDAC could avoid $1 million in taxes, they would go to the LLP. Any second.
finally. When we talk about this, Richland County has low unemployment, much like Trail County. The Riverview owned Gary facility was 60% staffed by employees transferred from the sister dairies. In Walken, it was 43 out of the 63 employees were moved over. Many of them are the what was it, H2? Sorry. Where exactly? I thought I had the H2 H2B visas. And they are federally checked. Incoming employees are likely to be immigrants who are transient, more social, or have more social supports than present community members, or will require more social support. So by that, all I'm saying is the question that we need to ask ourselves is, does the Richland School have really good English as a second language facilities? Do we have doctors in the county hospitals that can speak two languages? Because that can be issues that we can face with this. The dairy will take advantage of lax North Dakota environmental and labor laws and possibly ship products out of state. Although the nutrient management program, we can find that on the permit itself. Finally, the last thing, I talked a little bit about this. For smaller dairies, it has been a little bit harder, and I'm once again going to disclaim this by saying that Riverview Dairy did not cause these to close, but we did have a creamery shut down in Bismarck, North Dakota. We had a creamery shut down in Pollock, South Dakota, that's closing on August
Why bring
30th.
it up?
Huh?
Why bring it up?
I will tell you if you let me.
Okay, go ahead.
So the reason that I'm putting out here is that with fewer and fewer options and the fewer abilities for people to sell their milk, once again, if these operations are put up here, it's going to be very tough for a small dairy that has no more creameries around that are going to accept their 1 or 2 milk loads to be able to compete with this operation. And once again, it will possibly be their death. Investing in a patchwork value-added ag, I basically said that earlier with the infrastructure. When we're talking about infrastructure, we do have to figure out a way to address the tax issue of fixing the roads that these issues can have, but we've already talked about that. So I will continue on. So finally, I'm just going to end this up real quick with what's at stake here. So this is one of the first mega projects that's really being proposed in North Dakota. When you guys put this in here, your county and your township will be setting a precedent for everybody else in the state. Riverview will not likely be the only person to try and come into the operation. More CAFOs will come, and your actions might be the reason that other dairies close in the state. But ultimately, what I'm trying to say here is that whether or not you support this dairy, I think it's very important for everyone in this room to sit here and talk with the DEQ and tell them that we need to have a town hall conversation to address this and make sure that if any other operation comes in, they know that they're not just going to have a cakewalk and walk in, because some may not be as good as Riverview is. And finally, what are the options? There are several options. If you don't want this, you can ask for a moratorium on animal feeding operations until you can truly understand the infrastructure needs. This is a little bit more in Trail County because the train's already left that station. Option 2 is you could look at petitioning to the DEQ to permit this at a smaller size, or ask the company to voluntarily enter a legally binding contract with the township to do a nutrient management program with MPCA standards, because they are a Minnesota company and already have all of the infrastructure available to do it. It might be in your best favor to look at this and see if you can get that higher level of standards with this operation. Or finally, in this operation, we're a little bit past the rejection, but I would believe that if you want to reject this operation, you could also petition your local DEQ and submit a comment saying that you do not approve of this dairy and you do not want it in your community. This would at least trigger a town hall where you could have a further discussion with this. So what can you do? Once again, I would say in this case, you'll probably just want to contact the North Dakota DEQ. If you are interested in this, I have my business cards. I can help out with people getting to this site and being able to make a comment. You can also take a look at if you are a party that is affected by the dairy, seeking legal help could be an action. And also at the hearings, DRC is available to keep you informed with the hearings. So if you want to testify at these events, we can get you together and we can help you out with that. So finally, I think the biggest thing is just finding the power in network and collaborating, discussing things out, having an open and honest conversation. And so I will open the floor up to any questions, and we'll try to get out of here by no later than 9 o'clock. Let's just set that.
The 2023 corporate farm bill, is that what making this, my understanding is that makes this easier to happen? Is that true?
It is, but the ownership of that facility has to be 75% local, 25% out of state.
So basically from what I see here, there's no local government has no say, township has no say, and Richmond County has no say. It's all state that has controls everything, that they have to check off all the boxes.
No. All of those requirements are still intact. But now there is all we did was change it from kind of like an ADC or a 1, 2, 3 proposition to get people that want these types of facilities that they have to go through their township board, their zoning board, the county, then go on to the DEQ and then on to the state. So that there's a legitimate type of pattern or a flow to how these things are permitted.
When you look at the townships, they can't refuse, because if they do that, they have to go to court, right? I mean, that's kind of like on the stream. The township can't say no without legal action.
It depends township by township, depends on what the township has in their ordinance.
Well, that's gonna change with the task force committee meeting. There will be a statewide.
Well, it's just a task
Yeah.
force meeting with staff. I mean, they're
They
not
can't.
what is currently on law. It's township by township. You
Well,
are
look at our
correct.
township.
You are correct. I looked, the township already had it zoned, so it was allowable.
Okay.
And just to clarify, Richland County zoning is by townships, not by the county. So it is by the township. Yes. You're correct.
So those are my questions, and to me, it kind of sounds like a tough road to go against them. I mean, to fight this, you don't want it.
That I don't
If
know.
I may interrupt, the township or the county, whoever has the local zoning authority, is not allowed to address any number of things like security, lagoon, environmental. They're not allowed to address those things. And you're right, if the county or the township, whoever has the local authority, challenges a permit, the loser pays both sides of the fees.
And I would say also though that how many townships have the ability to monitor water quality, setbacks that are going to be effective for that have a problem with something that's down the road. That is all in the DEQ's hands to handle all of that stuff, not.
It is indeed. However, the townships may not put in any they cannot do anything stricter than state standards. I agree, the DEQ should have all the technical knowledge needed to do these. But when it comes to, when it comes down to it, the people in the localities have to live there. And if they feel that there is something that is not quite right, say, they're putting it next to a sensitive water asset, yeah, like Ashtabula. They should be able to say, no, we don't want this CAFO within a mile of Lake Ashtabula. They do not have that.
One thing, I toured, Campbell, so one thing I noticed is there's less houses down there. This is a populated area, really, where they put this farm. A lot of people just in a 2-mile radius are affected.
Yeah.
And Adler's 3 miles from the site. Yeah,
What about 25? I mean, we have little kids,
And-
the drinking of the water.
Well, what
the point is, it's more populated. People in these other areas, there was down there, this farm that was 1 mile from the facility. And I bet you the next one is probably 3 or 4. And there's very scattered when we go down there. You drive around here, there's houses everywhere. It's different. Totally different. And I would say if you flew over all these sites, this would be the most populated area of any site in Minnesota or South Dakota. Just a thought.
Yep, I agree.
And there's another thing I noticed when I was there, that bugged me, because I hate high pitched noises. Backup buzzers, unloaders all day.
So, yeah, right down, one of these were being proposed on the state lines. It would be a mile from my house. And so, but there is a farmer down there that is a half a mile from that. So I asked the PUC and the Attorney General, okay, what kind of rights do they have in North Dakota if that was built on the South Dakota line, on the South Dakota side of the line? He said that if that was built on, if their house was across the township road, it goes down the state line down there, there's nothing that North Dakota could do about it. That's, yeah.
Is there something that the legislature can do? Can we change some bylaws in the zoning or in anything that to help in the future of things like this happening. I mean, a big facility like this has a huge impact, and there should be more say in it than what there is.
I guess I would like to ask the question of Randy over there, the people that are around that facility down there, how do they feel about it?
About the dairy?
Yes, that are close by it.
Actually, well, we live 2 miles from Kansas City. And there is another person that lives a mile away from the dairy. And, they do not complain about it. He would be a fellow that I would expect to be one of the first ones to have really gone against him. And, they did not. In fact, we put manure on, and when we knife it manure, there's some smell or whatever going on. And we were on their yard, and I was a mile away on a bin site or a dryer. And it was pretty thick, and I was, I recognized it. And when I talked to them, I said, geez, I'm sorry about that, and they did not even have any complaints about it. So locally, there's a very, very positive.
How many cattle operation is that?
What's that?
How many cattle operation is that?
There's 1,200 or so now. It started at 10,000.
10,000.
Oh, it's 10,000 and it's bumped up a little bit after a couple of years and they were able to raise it up.
Because I grew up in dairy country and we incorporated manure and it's not guide up.
Absolutely, there's no doubt about it. I mean, when.
You can't make it smell sweet, I mean, it's there. And there's a lot of it that's gonna be dumped around the area.
That's also regulated too. There's full and medium and very stuff that's regulated in month that you could put on per year. I'm not a North Dakota guy. I can't get with
That's
those.
too bad.
Also, is there any time frame for once the manure gets spread that it gets knifed in, or can there be a?
It's immediate.
Right.
That'll all be in the nutrient management plan. So that'll all be spelled out.
Well, it'd be nice if it was spelled out before the whole permit was already paid. I mean, we haven't, this is like the first meeting that we've had about this operation.
Yeah, what permit has been approved already?
The building permit in the
Yeah.
township.
Permit by our-
Building permit is approved, and the DEQ permit been approved yet.
I don't know, I.
The DEQ,
That's what we're working on right now, but
the
The
DEQ.
DEQ permit has not been approved.
It
You
is-
have until
been
September
submitted what day?
19th to submit comments, and then they will decide if they want to have a public meeting.
September 17th, Madeline,
19th.
19th, okay.
so a lot of these issues that you guys are bringing up, and they're all legitimate. But what I'm saying is that there's no DEQ permit in place right now. So all this nutrient management, everything will be ironed out before that permit being issued. And if there's opposition or question, there will be a public hearing.
And that's why I'm asking all of you to come out here to tell your DEQ to have a public hearing. Whether you support this or not, I think regardless, that is the best course of action in order to get all of the, to get all of these issues ironed out with community involvement. And I would say you'd agree with that too.
Yes, I agree with you on that.
Yes.
The complete permit with all the supporting material, which is where I find, they say the devil's in the detail. I think that's really true. It's thousands of pages. I've just got it yesterday. So basically, you have 30 days to respond. It took about a week to get the material. So basically it leaves 3 weeks to get through all of this stuff. And it requires somebody with a hydrology degree, probably. It probably requires somebody who is an agronomist or knows farming really well to go through it. And it requires somebody who knows the area, knows where the houses are, knows where your wells are. Before I think you can say comfortably, yeah, this would be okay. And I think that raising questions about where you live and how it's going to affect your water and your taxes, et cetera, is not an unreasonable ask.
Are there any more questions from the audience?
Maybe have a comment. Sam.
Yeah, not a problem.
I was on the International Legislators Forum for 12 years or so. And we were putting on, there were programs put on like this about many, many different topics. And it got to the point where all of the information that we were getting was one-sided. And Sam, I think that in the beginning you said that you were looking at just bringing up these questions for discussion. But I believe your whole program was against this project. Now, we got a lot of smart people in here. And I think that it would behoove you to, if you're doing this again, to have somebody on the pro side of this that can answer these questions. Because we're all leaving here with more questions than we came with.
Well, that's a good thing, I think, but here's what I'll respond to that, is that I have sat through the Ag Task Force committees they've had these once a month for the past little under a year and a half now. And I have had a very one-sided approach to, it's very industry positive at the Ag Task Force meetings. I've gone to the Halstead Town Halls, and the Halstead Town Hall for the dairy up in Trail County. That was a very one-sided. They did not tell me about all of the potential downsides. So
that's wrong.
And so in my opinion on this is that I'm trying to provide a forum that can provide an alternative viewpoint. You know, I understand, and you have even heard me say a few things about Riverview Dairy that was good. I will admit that they don't have many DEQ violations in Minnesota, or whatever Minnesota's DEQ is. I have enough trouble keeping track of North Dakota stuff personally, but you know, I guess what I would respond to that is that you can turn on the TV, you can turn on the radio, you can go to these forums, you can see stuff put on by the Chamber of Commerce, the Corn Growers Association, the Soybean Council, all of these that are very pro animal agriculture. And I would say that my message here is a fraction, if not a tiny sliver of the commentary that is necessarily negative. And I do think that sometimes it needs to be said in the room. I think you'll remember I testified once to your in your ag chamber. I remember I was telling you because I saw every single person came up in favor of the bill, and I was the only person there to do the negative. And my sister always told me about the 10th person. And it's a philosophy in Arab culture that basically says that if 10 people are in a room and 9 people agree with something, it is the 10th person's obligation, whether or not they believe it or not, to disagree with them, just to check and make sure that there is no, just to check their math, basically. So sometimes I just got to be the 10th man, Larry.
I agree with you. I agree with you. And that's why we have two parties.
Yes.
Because, you know, bringing up that opinion of another viewpoint of something is valuable. And I appreciate that and how you are presenting this on that part of it. But I would sure like to have had somebody present to us and say, well, that's not right because we're injecting that manure, or we are we've already settled that, and or whatever question I guess it is.
And I guess
Who's responsible for doing that, Larry? Because I mean, he just came and gave us his opinion or his thoughts on it, which I appreciate. I don't know if I'm for it or against it, but I'm just listening. And so is it his responsibility to bring that, or is it someone else that's for this to bring the, and if there has been a meeting and I don't know about it, I apologize. But
Amy, I think who's responsible for that, who set the meeting up. So if it was the Dakota Resource Council or whoever set it up, they should be the one that say, okay, we're gonna try and find somebody that is on the pro side of this thing so that we can have some dialogue anyway and answer some of these questions that are out here because.
But
I think we.
the honest question is would Riverview Dairy invite me? That's the real question, you know?
Riverview Dairy had it by town hall here?
Yeah,
That's the big question.
Yeah, they could have brought up information and showed themselves.
yeah.
My biggest question is, if they're building this huge dairy, why don't we have a creamery then in Abercrombie? That would make most sense.
That would be nice.
We are not
And-
going to get a drop of milk out of this. We're not gonna get a piece of cheese out of this. All their cheese gets sold to the east and west coast. That's what we were told in Campbell.
McDonald's.
Okay, what, yes, whatever. So why do we, as people of Abercrombie, have to put up with the smell? Have to put up with the traffic, have to pay the taxes on the roads that are gonna get damaged? And basically have to worry about the security of our water for the rest of our lives, every single one of us. I'm a registered nurse for over 40 years and I have taken care of E. coli patients. And I have seen quite a few of them die. So you can't tell me there isn't a risk here. There is a definite risk.
I absolutely agree with you 100%. When we were talking about the placement of these dairies, my opinion was these have to be placed in the exact spot that it's not doing any harm. So, an unpopulated area such as maybe the Campbell area has more of a nicety to placing it there.
This is
But
between two
still-
rivers. This is right between two rivers.
Yeah, but so I'm very cautious and I'm not 100% jumping on the bandwagon for.
How many trucks has Mindat got from that road in the fall? Thank you.
But that's made by owners.
What?
That's made by owners. People who live, you know, I mean, it's a little different.
You can't control it.
I have one more question, but the DEQ, I mean, I'm a little. You're like, what you have to do to show that you don't want this, you have to give them. What you think is hazardous in the area for it. Like, people can't just sign a petition and say, hey, we don't want this, here's, you know, about.
Give a reason.
You got to, it's all reasons, like, write down all your concerns about what's gonna happen in the environment around, that's what they take, correct? I mean, that's what the DEQ takes in.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's why I want to be clear, so I know what to do.
And ultimately, I'd say one of the philosophies that we would have is that when you deal with a CAFO and an animal feeding operation, you do have a very high risk operation. So our philosophy would be that you need a very high barrier of entry to get in, because once the facility gets established, it's very hard to take down the facility. You know, and I guess our philosophy, and you can disagree with this on it if you want, but I do think that we need to make that bar for entry extremely high to, you know, bring these operations in. And if they don't even come close to meeting that standard or meet that standard, then we should deny the permits.
Why would you even want this facility near two waterways?
Yeah.
A really good question. And your water table, as you all know, is really, really shallow.
Yeah,
On one of your slides there, how many people does this employ?
this one would employ roughly 60 people. I'm just basing it on the walk-in dairy.
And
Um,
on the slide also, I think it said immigrants.
right.
Where are they coming from? Are they legal, illegal? Why are
They
we
would,
gonna-
no, they would be the legal immigrant program, the H2, yeah,
The
H2A, yeah.
program they use when they can't get local help.
Yeah.
They can't, no one's applying for those jobs. Yeah.
And Riverview at the town hall in the Halsted, Halsted Town Hall, had told me that they like to keep the,
Same thing.
they like to keep the people within their dairy in order to maintain a high quality of excellence to, you know, treating their cows. That's their spin on it. And personally, I would say You know, the other thing that they said is that this is a co-op. If you work 2 years here, you can start buying a share of the dairy for $3 a share. And it said that you had to work for 2 years. So my question that actually did, as I'm thinking about this, how long is the H2 visa? How long are those visas typically?
I think you have to
6 years.
renew them.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to renew every year, don't you?
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah,
that's some of
but I guess
same
the
water.
question, I have with that is, you know, are the immigrant workers that are working there able to buy stock in the dairy if they meet the qualification? I was wondering, are they cycling them out, you know, before the 2-year limit where they can't buy into the, you know?
So just about two months ago,
Yeah.
was on a virtual call where we were talking about that, and it was 1 year. And I recommended going to 2 years. Because it was actually, by the time those individuals get to where they're going, and
Yep.
and some of them have sat in motels for up to 6 months before they can actually do any work. And it was just ridiculous what the federal programs are in some of these things.
Yeah.
So we moved it to 2 years. And this is a national committee that I'm talking about, moved to 2 years, and then it was requested to change it so that they didn't automatically get the 2 years, but they got the 1 year, and then they
With the
got
renewal?
with the renewal if they had clean nose.
Mhm.
Basically.
Sam, have you toured one of their facilities? Because I know throughout your presentation, which was helpful. I know you had you used the word assume a lot in there. And so I'm just wondering if you've toured one of their facilities. I know they said
I have not.
anybody who wants to can
Yeah.
contact them.
I have not toured one of their facilities. I have, however, had several people that I know that live within them throughout my network at the NFFC, National Family Farm Coalition. And I would ask you this too. I have not toured this. I would ask, have you toured any regenerative dairy facilities and seen what the possibilities of those facilities are?
Don't know if they call them regenerative, but.
Pasture-based
Where there's a lot of
grazing, you know.
Conservation, a
Yeah.
lot of improved
Mhm.
forage.
Yeah.
Yes, I don't know if they're designated.
So how many individual dairies are there in the state of North Dakota today, you know?
26, last I counted.
How many were in 1980?
Yeah.
1980, I don't have those numbers. However, in 2000 though, there were 747, I believe.
1980 or 1800.
Yep.
So you present as the Riverview is gonna run the dairies out, and this is the first one in North Dakota. Doesn't it seem like the dairies are shrinking regardless of the Riverview, 1800 to 26?
I would also argue too, though,
answer
is
the
it,
question.
no, but here's my point, though. If they are shrinking, let's say we put in Riverview and it is 12,000 head, we have automatically made Riverview the largest dairy in the state, especially with the two. And now Riverview Dairy also dominates the state politics in the dairy industry.
Where does their dairy go to? So
Huh?
where does their dairy go to Riverview's?
River-
Right?
Huh? Yeah, Perham, correct.
What you mentioned Lisbon, where does their dairy go to?
Perham as well.
How about, some of the others, where the majority go to?
Well, the
Gas
question
play,
that-
right?
the
And so
question I have with that-
Let me finish, we talked
Yep.
about competitiveness, and it seems like you wanna go into protectionism. I don't think that's what we're based on in North Dakota, is protectionism. And so you are trying to create a protectionism, but yet you're opposed to them sending their milk to Perham. Would you rather see go to Cass Clay where the majority of the milk in North Dakota goes to?
That's really not relevant in
Well,
the
no, you could,
in
you
the
talk about,
sense
you
here.
talk about protectionism.
I would say that your operation, I would say ultimately you do need a creamery in North Dakota. You do, but I think you're putting on the horse before the cart if you're just trying to put a lot of animal agriculture out here. I would say a processing facility would be the better way to do it that can then supply many medium-sized dairies. I would actually advocate for a system if, for example, if Riverview decided to say, hey,
What do you consider medium?
huh?
What do you consider medium?
Honestly, I would say if Riverview was proposing, like, for example, in this case here, you got a 12,000 head dairy. You propose 4 sites over the entire Richland County of about 4,000 each. Our largest dairy in North Dakota is about 1,800.
But aren't you worried
Yeah.
about, you talk about the aquifer, wouldn't they be drawing out of pretty much the same aquifer? whether they're separate sites or same site?
Here's the issue though with
Would they-
that.
would they- would they
No.
not?
Right now, we don't even know where they're getting their water from.
Well, here's the issue with that though. If there is one problem with any of these sites, if they go down or if they close or if their operation, you are not basically trying to put all of your eggs in one basket and drawing completely from one aquifer. If you have them spread out over the county, you can basically work with them a lot easier to have less drainage in one area than if you're spreading them out,
So
basically.
you're telling me they'd be from all 4 different aquifers?
They would be, I'm not a hydrologist on there, but
They'd be drawn from different aquifers, pretty much be
Yeah.
drawn
from the entire county.
for the most part, yeah.
There are several aquifers in the area. And as I said before, it is unclear where their water is coming from at all. So this
Madeline,
becomes a question
Madeline,
of,
You said, Madeline, you said you didn't know what aquifer they're drawing from, so are you saying now you're a opponent for the Garrison diversion? Because if my recollection tells me correctly, you've always been an opponent of the Garrison diversion. So
that has no, I do not believe
Yes, it does.
that
Madeline.
has
You
any
said
bearing
you-
on this particular
answer the
local
question.
issue.
That's
I am just saying, where is the water coming from? It is not characterized in the permit. I can't get it from the DEQ. Your question was, well, if you had these cows spread over this area, would not you be drawing from the same aquifer? And I'm saying that the data is incomplete.
That's part of the permitting.
It's not part of the permitting. I asked.
In Park Rapids, there was a lot of potato farms up there. And they had a dry summer last year. And the potato farms sucked the water out, knowing that they'd have to pay a fine. And they said, oh, it's okay, we'll pay the fine, we need the crop. Problem was, a lot of independent wells dried up. And it's like, sucks to be you. Your well dried up, but we needed the water, we paid the fines, and there must have been small enough fines. And also, what's the lighting situation there? So if people live a mile away, is it gonna be like living next door to Fargo?
I toured the facility and it was night when we left, and I want to know all these questions that he's asking. Lights are on 24 hours a day. They get dimmed a little bit to X amount of candle powers at night, but you can still see it. The water, they have huge holding tanks, down south there, they truck it in. They use building runoff and they use aquifer. They use 3 sources.
Yep.
And tour the place. If you're all interested in how all this works, it's gonna be in your backyard. They'll give you a tour. They'll be very frank with you. They'll answer your questions. I don't think they were hiding anything from any questions we asked. And you gotta go down there. Definitely. They're very welcoming to that. But
I just have to make the final comment, and that is, what are we getting from this? The risks definitely outweigh the benefits to the majority of us.
other communities.
There's a few of us in this room that are going to benefit from this dairy farm coming in, but I can tell you, it's not the majority of the people. And why is it that the few get to boss around and just tell you, this is what we're gonna do? Because that is what happened to me. I had a large farmer from the area come to my home on January and tell me this dairy farm is going in. And I said, well, isn't there something I have to sign off on? You're gonna build your slough, your lagoon, your pile of poo is gonna be less than a mile away from me. Isn't there something I have to sign off on? No, there's nothing you have to sign off on. This is going through, this is gonna happen. And he left.
That's, I think we need a meeting, and I don't know who it is that comes in and tells them. I'm not even saying it isn't good, I don't know right now, but we need to hear if there's proponents of this, why is this good? And who is going to benefit from it? I know people, I know there's a handful, but who is it? And what are the rest of us? If it's good, great, show me what it is then. I'm not saying it isn't a challenge. I just don't know, and I feel like we've only heard one side. Thank you for your thoughts.
Yeah.
But if the proponents are here and they want us to know, then they need to set up a meeting and tell us what's gonna be good about it. If it is, I want my community to thrive too, so I would ask those in favor to put together something and show us the numbers and the information that tells us why it's good for us.
Well, I'd like to thank everybody for coming out today. I thought this was a very positive discussion. I will be around. I'll stick around. Be willing to talk and answer any questions. Have a nice day. Please, this is a rented out area, so if you have any garbage, please throw that away. Sure. Hey, thanks a lot, Madeline. I appreciate it.
No problem.
All right, I'm gonna end it now.
Okay.